Vinny Perth, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. How are you all doing?
Nice quiet week in sport.
Yeah, really quiet. Nothing going on. Government getting involved with sport again, and fair play to the GAA. They know how to stay right in front and centre of politics and life in Ireland, and let them sort it out themselves. But I'm sure it'll all work out eventually.
It was interesting when Declan McBennett was on telly last night. He was talking about the massive number of GAA matches and the massive number of rugby matches, and loads more football, Irish football, than we've ever shown before. It was like, not the number though. Is it how many League of Ireland matches is it? Is it
not enough?
Is it double digits? Is it just over double digits? I'm not sure. But they're not as committed to that as they are to the GAA anyway.
No, and I was supposed to say the viewing figures, and you'll hear all this stuff, but I think RTE and in particular have a responsibility to sport. You've just been speaking about basketball, and my challenge with it, from listening from the outside, is how do you fix what the problem is? How do you fix it? Do you just play GAA all weekend? Do you turn on your telly on RTE 1, 2 and watch GAA all weekend? So they've moved to GAAGO, and that's effectively pay per view or whatever the right word is. But so was Sky, but the world is changing, lads. I don't think I was in Crow Park. You can't pay cash anymore, you know. With stuff I do, some things I do outside of sport, people are paying, the older generation who aren't paying their bills on their phones now and topping up in cards, and life has moved on. So it all, I smell a rat from all different angles, you know. Politicians will look for extra votes by we've got to get it on telly.
I'm always very squeamish when the politicians are coming on. We started the show with the politician this morning, but there was definitely, you know, I think in fairness he is raising legitimate questions that he has an answer, might get a chance to answer. But when the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach are like, will I say something that is very wildly popular?
Because they know it's going to be unreal in the ears and they have to get their little soundbite in.
Maybe, yeah. But it's more that there's no consequence to what they say.
Well, yeah.
There's literally no consequence. They can say whatever they want about this, and other people are going to have to...
The way my brain works, throw one back at you. What's the solution to it? Genuine question.
Honestly?
Yeah, if money was no object, what's the solution?
Well, I don't think that the national broadcaster, who is the only now client for championship matches, should be allowed to be in partnership with the GAA for a separate organisation which is bidding against them.
I get that, but what's the solution for showing matches?
Some matches will have to be paid for. Some matches will, and there needs to be a decision about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. I do think
so. Then the cynical in me is this, although getting some bad publicity, is the GAA ultimately going to be paid some money by government as a subsistence, like whatever as a grant?
Pay for it?
Eventually, well, we're heading down that way. It feels like in the background
we give a lot of money to the GAA at the moment.
Yeah, but maybe they could do a little bit more.
Well, if money was no object, the national broadcaster should have a sports specific channel on terrestrial television.
Well, that would be great, because then there's loads of room for all of the sports. So is that where the discussion needs to go to, where there's actually a channel called RTE Sport, just sport channel, that provides the service?
Yeah. No coronations on the RTE Sport channel.
Well, maybe no Coronation Street, and, you know, maybe, I don't know. I think our relationship as a country with the national broadcaster is something that should be constantly up for conversation, because I don't think soccer fans are happy with their treatment.
No, and it's not just soccer fans, but the bottom line to it is, speaking as a soccer person, or whatever the right word is, that it can't be just a GAA discussion. This one is, but don't forget soccer in all of these. Don't forget all the other different sports, and it's amazing how many people jump up and down when I accept it's a national game. It's not something I'm overly interested in, but it's a national game. I shouldn't be turning on the channel all weekend and just seeing that sport. It should be mixed that reflects the whole society, because it is a state-funded TV, and it should reflect society. There's more people watching sport or soccer than GAA, I would say to you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think ancillary to this conversation is the conversation about greyhound racing and the millions and 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 millions that we've given to greyhound racing over the last 2 decades.
What's good about it is to make the point is, we're now on the back of the horse racing discussion that came up. On the back of this, maybe somebody in government might actually realise sport is hugely important to Irish people. You know, not just a minister who's, and not to be dismissive of the current Minister for Sport. We're not just Minister for Sport and something else, actually a Minister for Sport, dedicated to sport, and someone who has a real, a proper department of sport.
Yeah.
Because it's so, I keep saying it is so important to society that we live in, the sport, whether it's kids playing basketball, hurling under eights, or basketball, ladies football, all of these things. It's so important that somebody takes notice of. So maybe it's part of a bigger discussion that needs to be had, but not just throw money at the solution.
There is loads of money floating around, though, do you know?
Yeah.
And if it was spent properly, it would actually have a knock-on impact on health, on integration, and loads of different things.
Well, the advantage, the last point, the advantage the GAA have is they've now got an income that has to be replaced if they stop the GAAGO. So straight away, that's the cynic in me.
Well, GAAGO already makes $1 million a year profit, and that was before they had the domestic market the way that they have now. That was just from the international streaming a couple of years ago. Anyway, we're supposed to be talking League of Ireland.
Sorry, yep.
Quiet week in the League of Ireland too.
Oh, yeah, you could say that. I mean, we had a brilliant game on well, it wasn't a brilliant game, brilliant occasion. Palace Stadium is obviously an exceptional stadium. It was, you have to be careful, it was quite a routine enough win for Rovers in the end, but Bows were very good on the day, but it wasn't a brilliant game. There was a lack of quality in the final third from both teams. That has to be said. But I mean, Rovers' last 8 games, I think they've won 7, scored 19 goals, conceded 3. They're playing exceptional at the moment. But and I'd like to think on here I've waxed lyrical about Rovers and Bows at different stages, so much so people in Tala have questioned me health. Am I okay? Right? When they hear me going, you're too nice to Rovers. And I've defended referees. I just thought Bows got done on Friday. It wasn't good enough. It was a very one-sided performance. It was a game of fine margins, and so many of the fine margins went against Bohemians. I've seen some people debate whether it was a penalty or not. It was just a penalty. You can't. It was completely out of control.
Declan Devine very unhappy afterwards.
Yeah, and rightly so. But it's funny when you're at game live. So when they scored the first goal, my first reaction, because I'm neutral and I don't have to celebrate the goal, was to look at the linesman, because my sense was Trevor Clark was offside,
right? And
he was offside. When you've got a really strong referee, you always find, because people's question about the penalty decision is why didn't the linesman get involved? And when you've got a really strong referee who's a very senior referee, sometimes you find linesmen don't tend to interfere with the senior guy. So I thought the fine margins went Rovers' way. The first incident in the game was a ball over the top of Lee Grace, and I felt Dylan Connolly got in behind him. I felt that was an area for Bows to exploit. He went shoulder to shoulder with Lee Grace and a free out against Dylan Connolly, and I sat with a couple of people and pointed out this could be a long night for Bows, and it turned out that way.
Yeah, and in fairness to you, even when things weren't going great for Rovers at the start of the season, when they were drawing games, you were like, it's going to happen, and it could happen as quickly as this weekend, because Bows have Derry City at home and Rovers are at UCD, and Rovers will be top more than likely after that.
Yeah, you would say so. Look, to be fair to Bows, what they've done all season is when they've lost games, they've bounced back and won. And this would be a huge win for them if they were to beat Derry this week. A home to Derry. Derry's form has just been okay. It's even beating Drogheda the other night. They weren't, wasn't an outstanding performance. They're missing some senior players. That will obviously be the excuse, and rightly so. I mean, Cameron Dummigan, Connolly, centre half, Patrick McElhenney is missing. So that's a huge blow for any team in the league, and probably only Rovers could deal with that. But they go to Bows this week, who have been good in Dalymount, have always bounced back. So there's a big lesson to be learning this weekend, because it's an interest, and it's for so people understand the European clubs will have a weekend off later in the season. So to allow for that, the four of them will play each other on Monday. So Derry will play Dundalk and Rovers will play St. Pat's. So the four of them in Europe, to give them breathing space later on the season. So it's a big weekend for Derry. They play a good Dundalk team that are in form, and Bows away. So it could be a good weekend for Bows, or for Rovers, should I say.
one of the things there about Bowes and coming back, it's really important that they don't allow this just to peter out, that this wasn't just a surge at the start of the season. They need to make sure that, you know, like a little bit like Arsenal in recent weeks, where there was a blip but then they recover from it and they keep the pressure up on Rovers, because otherwise Rovers could open up a gap over the next few weeks and very hard to claw that back.
Yeah, and I think to be fair, the Bowes have got to ride that sort of wave of momentum, the feel good factor around their team, the dressing room, the way they've played well at different stages, but even when they haven't played well, they've won games. So and I think getting to the window for them is important. I feel they've got the finance in place to be able to strengthen that team and push on. Securing European football, I think, would be a marvellous achievement for them. They've lost the last 2 Dublin derbies to Rovers and been sort of, albeit the game went against them the other night, they've lost both of them 2-0, and Rovers, in their view, would say they're comfortably ahead of them. So if Bowes are going to be the nearest challengers, then they've got to stay on their coattails and get to the window and see can they sign some players.
James McClean joining Derry, if that did happen, would be brilliant for the league, right? Mm-hmm. Would he still get in the Ireland squad? Because he still merits a place at the moment.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Which bit? Him coming now?
I don't think it'll happen now. Could be wrong. And I think I would say he will lose his place in the Ireland squad if he goes to Derry.
Right.
And I think he'd be aware of that, and he'd probably get one more year, I would say, a championship. Now look, I could come out of studio today and he signs for Derry. I have no information. I was actually in the hotel on Friday, and the Derry squad walked in, chatting to the guys, and obviously a lot of close friends in Derry. I've no information on that, but I just don't see it happening.
Okay.
So I think he'll take another year with his international place being important to him.
Bit of managerial turnover in the league in the last couple of weeks. Tim Clancy gone from Pats, John Daly winning start as interim manager, and then you see Cork City looking for applications to replace Colin Healy as well. Do your ears prick up when you hear of a managerial vacancy pop up?
Yeah, not to not answer your question and not to be all politician about it. I think it's important to say Tim Clancy's a good example where really harsh when someone leaves League of Ireland football, and the pile on now on social media and different bits and pieces. And Tim's got, a partner and 2 young kids. I think he's married, I don't know, but the point stands. And remember, when Tim Clancy left his job, it was on the 6-1 news, right? So it's like it hurts, and it's deep, and really, really hurts. And I'll come off Tim for a second and just give you a little insight. Like most League of Ireland managers, the average wage is probably about 40, maybe 50,000. So obviously people on a little bit higher than that, a little bit less. So you're not walking, and with contracts you may be entitled to 6-9 months or whatever, but you're going back to work pretty soon. And it's a really difficult life, League of Ireland management. It's great, it's brilliant, we all love it and want to do it, but it's not as easy as people think. I remember when I left, the neighbours on the road knew why the car was in the garden. Like it's and they're only small things. My kids knew, they know, like it's not, as I said, it was on the 6-1 news, like as part of the bulletin, and you still have to earn money. And the problem with, since I've left, I've only applied for 1 job since I've left Dundalk, and in that time I pulled out that job halfway through the process because it became a social media pile-on. And remember, you're probably working somewhere else. I mean,
what do you mean social media pile-on? Like?
As in, once these jobs, once they're not replacing managers very quickly, then that allows Billy 1, 2, 3, 4 say Vinny Perth hasn't a clue what he's doing. Sure, it was only Stephen Kenny's team or whatever it is they'll say about Clancy or about Colin Healy at the moment. So the club should make quicker decisions, I would feel, and get people in place. And because we live in that world now, it is really, really difficult time for people. And remember, so I still have to put bread on the table in my house. So being linked to another job or being spoken about, you'll have a boss ring and you go, are you leaving us?
Yeah.
Now, when I left Dundalk the second time, what happened around that same time? Solskjaer walked away with 7 million, right? And I walked away with a 2-year contract that was deemed null and void. So people need to give people a bit of a break, and we're in and out job. I understand we're all fans and we want the best I'm here talking about games, or people will talk about Premiership, but League of Ireland is still in its infancy, and it's a really difficult place for young managers. And I really feel for Tim. I think he will be better as a result of it. I know if I do go back in at any stage, even the second time I went to Dundalk, I felt I was so much better as a manager. He will be a better manager for it. But that's a long-winded way. I'm not answering your question, but you have to understand that people have to provide for the families on 50, 60, maybe if you're lucky to be on 60,000. Once that stops, you've got to go back to work. Like, we've people in our league working as postmen, and we've people working in different bits and pieces. So it's a really difficult time when you're linked to these jobs and different things.
Obviously, it's harder then after you go back to find an employer. It's like, oh, you want to come work for us for 3 months or 6 months or whatever. You hadn't really thought of that. Is there a solution to that, like, obviously you don't want to just have a carousel of only 3 or 4 managers who are ever available for jobs in the League of Ireland, but is there some way that if you were thinking about football in Ireland and thinking long term strategically from the FAI's perspective, they need more Indigenous coaches. They need good quality coaches at every level, at the academy level in the League of Ireland clubs and the schoolboy clubs, and however they make peace there, best of luck with that. But they also need young competitive coaches who are getting their opportunities in Ireland and then hopefully going abroad and broadening the pool. At the moment it seems you need to have a number of Ireland caps and then you can get part of the Ireland underage set up. Is there a better way of doing that maybe that isn't just...
Well, there's no industry in this country for coaches. So, and I think when you look at how good the RFU are, for argument's sake, I would say to you, if I'd have been, and they're different, but if I'd have been an RFU coach who came out of work, I think I'd be working somewhere. They would. And they would find employment for me somewhere, whether that would be Connacht 20s or...
There'd be a pathway there,
pathway, somewhere to say, we need someone who's, remember, Ireland has only produced so far, I think it's less than 100 pro-licensed coaches, and X amount of... Some unfortunately passed away, some aren't from the country. So there's only a small pool of them people. I think there's no industry here. I think people ignore a little bit of experience as well. Look at Sean Dyche, look at Roy Hodgson at the moment. Look even at Warnock going in to save Huddersfield. People ignore that a little bit in terms of it's all about what's new, what's coming through, and sometimes they forget that. But I think there's a huge appointment on the way within FAI, the assistant director of football. Okay, so they appointed Mark Adam a couple of years ago, and the assistant role is up now. And my point about something like that is, if that's going to go to someone who has 50, 60, 20, 80 caps, no problem. Once they've earned it.
Yeah.
For example, if Damien Duff gets a high-profile job now, he's earned it. He's earned his bloody stripes and he's done his work. But in that role, if, for example, Ger O'Brien at St. Pat's or Shane Robinson at Shamrock Rovers, or even within the FAI, Will Clark, aren't on a shortlist of 4 or 5 people for that role and aren't properly interviewed, that role should be given to people who've done the hard yards and young Irish coaches who have done a huge amount of work. You look at the players. We've got players in Serie A playing at the moment, produced by St. Pat's, who was led by the academy director. We've got Gavin Bazuna, who was produced by Shamrock Rovers. So we know what we're doing in the country. But I have a big fear that the FAI are going to go down the road of appointing people with caps just for the sake of it, and it is sexy and it'll make good headlines. Such and such player is involved with this, but make sure they've done the hard yards. And so there's no industry, and it's really, really difficult for people to find a pathway. My own personal experience, I had to come out of it. I had to earn money. Did I do well out of football? Absolutely, but I had to earn money. And then I can't go to an employer, as you said, and say, hey, yeah, you see that stuff they're all talking about on social media there. I am applying for that job in the background. Yeah. And if I get it, I'm just going to walk out the door next Friday because I've got to go again Friday night.
Definitely not distracted by it at all.
No, and it's and it's stuff that's in the back of the papers and it's on social media and people hear stuff and the world we live in now. So very difficult for us coaches because there's no industry and people have to Give them a little bit of breathing space, a little bit.
All that negative stuff notwithstanding, like the lack of money available for managers and the social media pylons, do you have the itch to go back?
Oh yeah, absolutely do. And like when I talk about experience, like you look at maybe Allardyce, he probably gives that sort of line of a bad name in terms of the way he went out. And I'm trying to be careful how I answer this, but absolutely do. I, like, rightly or wrongly, I believe in myself. Not many people in the last 10 years have won a league title in this country. Very few are working. Obviously Stephen Bradley, and someone who certain sections would jump on, John Caulfield, is doing a brilliant job at Galway, because it takes a little bit of know-how to win a league and a little bit of ability, and mightn't be the sexiest name in the world, but at the same time absolutely have the itch. I'd love to do it, but it may not happen, and I'm okay and I'm comfortable with that, because you had a good innings, and if your time is up, it's up. But no, absolutely interested in it. Love the game. Probably at more football matches than anybody else physically. I was at 3 o'clock last week on 5 o'clock game and watched the 7 o'clock game. So really, really would love to do it, but it's all about timing and it's about context. And for example, my daughter sent me a screenshot last week. So I think it must be 125 Emmett Road, or must be the address of St. Pat's. But I was seen down there last week. But at the same time, I was in Drogheda at a meeting.
Right.
At the same time. So she was going, are you going back to St. Pat's? And I was going, I'm in Drogheda at a meeting. Like.
Yeah.
So it's just the world we live in now. So to answer your question, absolutely believe in myself. I've won a league. I still am the reigning League Cup winning manager, because you haven't played the competitions in a while. So.
That's fair, yeah.
Do you get the trophy?
I don't know where the trophy is, actually. I must find
dig it out.
Yeah.
Vinny, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.